Our next speaker is a junior at Nonawog High School. She has been an intern at a local law office, and I will not name that office. And for her project on AP research, she wrote and studied about and researched and wrote about the topic racial bias within wrongful convictions. Please welcome to Justice Southbury, Grace Walkup.
Hello, my name is Grace Walkup and I'm a junior at Nonawog High School. So this school year I took AP Research, a class where students explore topics of personal interest to them and create research on their selected topic. In taking this class, I was able to think about what mattered to me and what I would use my time to study. I've always had a passion for social justice, and I remember making Grace for the First Woman President signs in art class and getting poster paper and markers to hang signs when I heard that immigrant children were being held at the United States-Mexico border, and I would hang these posters on my bedroom window. Seeing injustice troubled me, which was something that I thought was inspiration for my AP research project. After evaluating different topics of interest, I decided to research how racial bias contributes to the wrongful conviction of African Americans in the United States. I also hope to study law in college, and this project combined my passions for the legal system and social justice. So as I found, initial data collection showed that African American men are far more wrongfully convicted of serious crimes than other Americans. Although the current field of scholarly data showed little elaboration on why this problem exists or what could be done to solve it, I felt obligated to find such answers. In order to conduct my research, I created a case study where I took 20 cases that involved the wrongful conviction of an African American man and evaluated the judicial processes within each case. After I ran each case through my own coding process, I evaluated the things that happened during an investigation with investigators, and I looked at what evidence was given to state prosecutors that would then lead to a judge to convict someone of a crime. And I categorized each of these cases once I ran them through a coding process, and these categories would determine what caused the wrongful conviction in each case. And I determined that the main categories were perjury of witnesses, manipulation of evidence, and investigative violations. So after I looked at 20 cases, I discovered that 50% of wrongful conviction cases are caused by investigative violations. 45% are caused by manipulation of evidence, and 5% are caused by perjury of witnesses. Along with these categories, I discovered 3 other contributing factors that existed within each case, or multiple factors in a single case. The first being illegal interrogation, which is something that is very common when an African American is involved in a serious crime, and this can be investigators leaving them in an interrogation room for a long amount of time, or returning the suspect to the crime scene, which can be psychologically very harmful and can lead to a false confession. The second factor that I discovered was faulty DNA testing, which most of the time occurs in murder or sexual assault cases, where DNA is collected from a crime scene, but it could belong to many people, but a lot of times they focus on one person, which is a form of racial bias. And finally, incorrect eyewitness identification, which is common through issues with face matching technology and lineups that investigators run, where the investigators will take multiple suspects of a crime, and the person who was involved in the crime will select who they believed did it, which often comes out as a person of color or racial minority, which does show bias. So what this data has shown me is that African Americans are far more subject to these judicial violations impacting their cases, which form racial bias in the justice system. As I began piecing my data together, I discovered why evidence is being manipulated. And this is because investigators who are behind collecting this evidence from the crime scene manipulate it in a way that causes a bias or is caused by a personal prejudice. And then they give this evidence to prosecutors, which can then lead to a judge sentencing someone for a crime that they didn't commit. And throughout my study, there were multiple cases that were very impactful and resonated with me. One being Connecticut versus James Tillman, where he was a young black man accused of sexual assault, and when the DNA was collected from the crime scene, it was discovered that his DNA could have belonged to 20% of other males in the U.S., but they decided to hone in on his case. And he spent 15 years in prison for this. Another case was Jonathan Fleming, and in 1989, he was going to Florida to Disney World with his family, and when he returned to his home in Brooklyn, New York, he was accused of murdering his neighbor when he was gone. He wasn't even there for the time of the murder, and he was still arrested, tried, and convicted to 25 years in prison. After his case was reopened and exonerated after spending 25 years in a prison, he felt that there was a racial bias that contributed to his case. This vicious cycle continues to wrongfully incarcerate innocent people and can only be prevented with more research and continuing the conversation about this issue. Throughout this research process, I have learned the historical and cultural implications of how racism have infiltrated our justice system, a system that's supposed to protect us. I want to continue my passion for this issue as I pursue the legal field in my future. If I could leave you with one thing today, it would be to keep the conversation going. The more people talk about the issues facing African Americans and racial minorities in the U.S., the closer we become to preventing these injustices from persisting in the future. I would like to extend a thank you to Mr. Richardson for his guidance and allowing me to follow him in court and letting me see him bring people with a different kind of justice, like returning children to their parents. And his guidance through the legal system has also inspired me to continue my work in social justice. So thank you for listening to me today. Woo!